Hi everyone, it's Shannon and welcome to today's video. So I am back with another Shop Alter Ego, I guess inspired by palette. Not, it's a dupe, right? It's a dupe, but they just came out with a brand new palette. I think it came out, I'm recording this on December 5th, so it came out today. Hopefully I'm gonna get this up in the next few days, but this is the Sundown palette. So this came out today and this is inspired by the Natasha Denona My Dream palette, which is one of my favorites. It's not my favorite. I'm actually working on a ranking, but it is in my top 5. And but it is one of my favorite palettes. The formula is fantastic. The color story is great. So I was very excited to see that Alter Ego came out with their own version. So let's talk about the Sundown palette. Okay, so first let's talk about the packaging. I love the outer packaging. Now, I saw the promos, but I had already received the palette when they had the promo, so I knew where it was inspired by. But if you compare the two, it's very different. It's a very different, color story. Sometimes they kind of coordinate, sometimes they don't. I always love the way they lay out the palette. I think it's always very cohesive, and to me it's more user-friendly. And even when they showed the color story, obviously I've done swatches already, but when they showed the color story, people were like, I'm now off to rearrange my Natasha Denona My Dream palette to that layout. And I kind of thought, I like keeping it the way it's laid out. I just don't like changing it. But I wouldn't mind changing it because I do think it just makes it easier and more cohesive. But this one is the My Dream palette is $69, and the Sundown palette is going to be $24. And I have a 10% promo code. It's Shannon 10, I believe. I'll make sure I put it. It'll be in the description box below, but it's going to be, I believe it's Shannon 10, and that will shave you 10% off. So 24, it's going to be, I think $21.60 is what it will come out to. They also have an amazing eyeshadow primer. It's normally $7. It's on sale for $5. It's great. They send me, every time they send me a palette, they send me a new eyeshadow primer. I've gone through, I think I'm on my 3rd. So I use it. It's pretty much the eyeshadow primer I use, but I've actually had to give a couple away because I've gotten a lot, and it's a really good eyeshadow primer. So if you're picking up a palette and you need an eyeshadow primer, definitely pick up one of those. So now I will say with the most recent dupes, not that they haven't been as good. I think the quality of Alter Ego is just as good as it's always been. However, the formulas of Natasha Denona have improved. So I do, and I will say I've already done swatches. I will say that is pretty consistent with this one. I think it's really good. Now I haven't tried it on my eyes yet, and that's what I'm going to do today. But I will say the special shades that Natasha Denona has, there's definitely some differences. So, but we'll get into I did some swatches and comparisons earlier today. I basically did all mattes and then all the shimmers and did side by side. So let's get into that now. Okay, so what I did is I did swatch these before and put them in natural sunlight. I did want to, because sometimes it's hard to figure out which shade is which. This one was a little bit easier because this, the My Dream palette is a little bit more diverse. With the one that was for I Need a Nude was really difficult because some of the shades are so close. Some of the shimmers, the early shimmers might be missed, I might have switched them a little bit. I think I got them right, but I'm not 100% sure. But what I did, like I said, is I did the swatches first with the mattes, and I kind of did it lightest to darkest, and then I did these shimmers, the same thing. And in each swatches, you will see the first shade is the Sundown palette from Alter Ego, and the second shade is going to be the one from Natasha Denona My Dream. So here we go, and here is the mattes, and you'll see now there are some differences, especially a little bit with the undertones. The second shade, I did think that there was some difference. The purples were actually pretty similar, and honestly, the Sundown palette actually swatched better, and the black shade swatched really, really well. Whereas the Natasha Denona, and I've had the Natasha Denona since it came out, so it is an older palette, but you know, the black one swatched amazing. But for the most part, I thought they were pretty close to each other, and I thought they were pretty comparable. Where you're going to see the most difference is the shimmers, and here we have it. So you can say like those first two shades, I'm not really sure if I got them correct, but for the most part, I thought they were good. You'll see the fourth shade. One is a little bit more yellow gold and the other one is more orange. The one from My Dream is a little bit more orangey and coppery, where the one from Sundown is a little bit more yellow gold. I prefer the one in My Dream. And the last shade you will see is that's that special shade. That's kind of the duochrome. That one, there is a little bit of a shift in the Sundown palette, but it's not nearly as pronounced as the one in the My Dream. But I don't think it's substantial. I think for this one, I thought there were definitely more differences and more differences between the palette in the I Need a Nude. And whereas this one, I think where the I Need a Nude and the Yucca had more special shades. I can't remember when this one came out, if it came out before Yucca or after. But I think this one just didn't have as many of those like special wet foil shades. I really don't remember, but I didn't see that many differences. I thought they were very, very close. But, you know, again, like that duochrome, which is in the Natasha Denona, it is, let's see, it is the shade Vision. So it's just got a little bit more of a shift, where in the Sundown, it has a shift, just not as pronounced. So you're gonna get a similar effect, but maybe not as, you know, again, pronounced. Okay, so as always, I'm going to put Alter Ego on this side and the Natasha Denona on this side. So let's go ahead and, so I'm going to go pretty neutral. I'm gonna go very, very neutral. I'm not gonna use that duochrome shade because I think it's gonna be too much of a difference. That one I'm gonna tell you is just gonna be a different shade. And not huge difference, but you're just not going to get that depth that you're going to get in the Natasha Denona palette. So I am going to go in with the shade Calm, which is like the lightest shade. And on the Natasha Denona, it is the shade Unity. So I'm going to go in first with that on the this side, which is the Sundown palette. Okay, so there is the Sundown side. Now, typically, and this is the same case with this, I do have to build it up a little bit more than I would on the Natasha Denona side. This one is just going to be more pigmented. But if you are a beginner in eyeshadow, sometimes that's not a bad thing, because sometimes that helps you kind of like, just not, if you make a mistake, it's not going to be as noticeable. So sometimes not being as pigmented, like no pigment's bad, but not being as pigmented isn't a bad thing, especially for beginners. So there you have it. That is the two sides of the Sundown and the My Dream. Okay, next I'm going to go in with the shade Warmth, and the coordinating shade is Familia in the My Dream palette. So again, I'm gonna go pretty light-handed, but you will have to build it up with the Sundown palette. So it's just, but it's, again, not a bad thing. Okay, so that is the Sundown side. So now I'm gonna go in with the Familia, or the Familiar shade on the My Dream side. And this one I know is just going to be pigmented. So I'm gonna be a little bit more light-handed because it didn't really build up the other side, but I liked how it came out. But this one is already darker, so I'm not going to reapply. I'm just going to try and blend it out to match the other side. Okay, so again, the Sundown and My Dream, I think it actually looks pretty even. This one, I had to go like light-handed, and this one I had to build up a little bit, but I got the same result. So just know that just you have to just kind of go light-handed or blend it out a little bit better. This one you have to kind of build a little bit more, add a little bit more to your brush. Plus I'm using natural hair brushes. So what I find with the, you know, especially the alter ego palettes or a less expensive eyeshadow, you really need to, if you use a high quality brush with a less expensive shadow, you're going to get a good result. If you use kind of lesser quality, cheaper brushes, it's going to be a little bit harder to work with. So I find that when I use like a natural hair brush, I can use, I really get a good result even with, you know, a less expensive palette. So with that, now I'm going to go in with the shade Afterglow, which is this one right here. And then I believe the coordinating shade is Spontaneous in My Dream. So I am going to apply it with a brush. I sometimes go in with my finger, but I like going in with the brush. So I will probably go back in with my finger, but for now I'm going to go in with the brush. Okay, so here is the Sundown side. Now I'm going to go in, and I never went in with my finger. Now I'm going to go in with the My Dream side. And this one, let's see, it's actually, I think it's pretty close. Now I picked shades that I thought were pretty close in the swatches. I purposely didn't pick shades that I thought were pretty different. So there were definitely some, if I really wanted to see a contrast, I could have picked different shades. I am seeing a little bit of a difference. The My Dream side was smoother, went on easier. And I do think it has a little bit more shine, but for the most part, I think it's got, for the most part, you're going to get a similar look. And is anybody going to really notice? Probably not. Okay, now I'm going to line the lower lash line with the shade Edge. So not the same shade. I'm going to go with a different shade. So the shade Edge, which is also Nurture in My Dream. So I don't see too much of a difference here. I just wanted to line the lower lash line with a different shade, and goes on great. So not really much you're going to see here. And then I'm going to go in on Nurture on the My Dream side. Okay, so I am going to go ahead and put some mascara, touch up my makeup, and come back and give you my final thoughts. So I am back and I have a special guest. It's Ryder. Say hi, everybody.
Hi, everybody.
Okay, so you know the drill.
Yep.
You got to pick which one is the least expensive eye and which is the more expensive eye. You're not gonna get it. You're not gonna get an F if you get it wrong. It's okay.
And then this one's more expensive and that one's least expensive.
Okay. Well, this is the first time you got it wrong. Okay.
I saw like a little black thing. I was like,
okay, well, that's fine. But that's good. You know, that's good because what we're doing is they made a more affordable option. Mm-hmm. So it's good that the more affordable option, you can't tell the difference. That's a good thing.
Yeah, there's like a little black part.
Yeah. Okay. We'll say thank you, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
Okay, so as you see, this was the first time Ryder did not guess correctly. Now, I did try and go with shades that were not that different. There are shades, like I mentioned, the shades, the one that's going to be amber. This one is a little bit more yellow than the one in My Dream. And then the shade Prism. It doesn't really have those are, I think, they're the two biggest ones. The two biggest difference. It doesn't have as much of a duochrome effect. So I think if I did those would have been, you know, a little bit more noticeable. Whereas this, I think we're very comparable. But again, the pigmentation is less, but it's that way you just have to build it up more. With the My Dream or any Natasha Denona palette, you know, you just got to go more light-handed because you can easily apply too much and then you have to blend it out. So it's just a little bit different to work with. Now, the My Dream palette for Black Friday was $34.50, right? It's normally $69. It was $34.50. This is $24. So if it's the difference between $34.50 and you get it 50% off and $24, I'd go with the Natasha Denona, like no question, right? But it's back up. I just checked. It's back up to $69. So when you're checking between $69 and $24, again, I do have 10% off. $21.60. Then, you know, I think you're going to get a similar look, and it depends. And I think it also depends on like color stories. Now, this is a color story I actually use quite a bit. But if it's like color story, you know, with the alter ego palettes, if it's a color story that you like, but you don't necessarily love, then definitely go with the alter ego. But I think it's a great option, especially if you just couldn't afford the My Dream. You just didn't want to spend that much money and you want to try this one. I think it's a really good, this one I think is definitely more comparable than the one that was the I Need a Nude. I think that one was a little bit, you know, just not as, the special shades really were different. So here was, there's only a few shades where there's kind of more of a difference. But otherwise, I think it's a really, really good inspired by palette. So with that, if you like this video, click like, click and subscribe. That way you get a notification every time I post a new video. Bye everyone.